it's like you get so far behind. Sarah and the RV guys are coming over soon. Please help them locate the area, and I forgot that when I name it, like if I set up a
Yeah.
if I set up a group and I don't do it right, they see my group name.
Oh, okay. So if
So
you
like if I
misspell it
name
or
it Whip
something.
Lips or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, it is just not healthy. Sarah, please let Ruben know when you leave so he'll be on the lookout for you guys. All right. Okay, let's get going.
All right, let's go. Gonna roll.
Are we rolling already?
We're rolling.
All right,
Okay,
let's
I'll
drink
start.
a beer. We should really be having a pint of beer.
We'll do an Irish pub soon. I am here in Patriot Mobile Studios. I've been trying to get hold of Glenn. I've been here for just over a week, and I've been to so many Patriot Mobile events, and the only time I actually can get Glenn is to sit down on an interview with him. So that's really why I've sorted out an interview, so I can catch up with you, Glenn. But it's great to be here in the offices. Thanks for having me here.
Are you truly recording this interview?
Yes.
Oh boy, I gotta watch what I say. You know, good thing that I try to be truthful, honest, and sometimes try to be funny, and it doesn't really happen that often.
It usually works.
I'm funny looking.
But look, I want to get, I mean, the Warren Posse will know Patriot Mobile very well. And I want to get your background and how Patriot Mobile have grown, what you do, all of that. But maybe you could start for our UK audience that may not know who Patriot Mobile are. What is Patriot Mobile? And then we'll get into your history.
Well, the technical phrase is Patriot Mobile. No, mobile. We in the U.S. don't really know what mobile is.
Mobile.
Anyway, yeah, you know what? This was in hindsight, it was really God speaking to us. And, you just don't hear it sometimes. A lot of guys hear this, hey, Glenn, do this. Well, in my case, it wasn't that. It was really this gentle push to say, okay, maybe you guys need to start a cell phone company. And quite frankly, we were on a football field when a guy approached me. This is back 13 years ago, August, Texas, 106 degrees, on a football field with young kids, probably second, third grade, something like that. And a guy came and said, hey, why don't we start a mobile phone company? And I said, you got to be out of your gourd. Right? We can't do something like that. And he walked away with his tail between his legs, came back about a week, maybe 2 weeks later. And Scott Coburn, our chief marketing officer, was a coach on that football team as well. And he was a part of Patriot Mobile very early on. We weren't paying any salaries, so he decided to start another company and made some money, sold it. Anyway, the guy came back to me and said, here's what I want to do. We want to target Republicans, not even conservatives. And I was like, okay, there's a niche, right? I think there's a there. And what we ended up doing is we started a cell phone company in 2013. It took us 6 years to get to 13,000 subs or 10,000 subs. But what happened is we hit every landmine that you could hit. What does it take to set up a cell phone company? Well, you got to get partners, you got a billing system, you have to apply with the FCC, etc. So we did all that. And what was interesting, we had a pretty good growth curve, but we ended up rebranding from Patriot Mobile, mobilizing conservatives, to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative cell phone company. And the interesting part of that is our sales went from this to really this. I always say, this is man, this was God. And I can show you a graph where it just goes. Now, there's a lot of things that went in it, but I would say 100% of that was his blessing on that, because I'll even look back at when this happened. we had cell phone people around us. And I'll never forget when I went to one of my board members came in and said, Glenn, you're being really kind of stupid. You're not serving him in the right way. And your wife taught Bible school with my wife. And so what we ended up doing was, I said, okay, maybe we need to do this rebranding. And so I didn't even go to the existing senior team because I knew they would never have that, because that just wasn't a cell phone company. But what they didn't realize, this is a mission-based company. We're not selling cell phone service. Yes, we are. But it's the mission behind it that drives people to come to us, because what we want to do today is not be a cell phone company. We want to be this company that says, hey, with something you already have, right? We're not asking you to go out and buy a Maserati. We're asking you to buy something you already have. And we say, look, we're going to glorify God with everything we do. Not only glorify God, but defend our rights, God-given rights and freedoms. And I said that last night at the rodeo, and I believe it with all my heart and soul, that that's really why we're here. It's not the phone itself, it's that mission. And quite frankly, now all of a sudden we got a customer base that's been with us for years, and we can go back to them. You saw what happened last night. We sent a small email out, and thousands of people showed up.
So you started a mobile. If you start in the UK, it'll have to be Patriot Mobile. You'll have to learn the word. So we'll work on that.
Yeah.
So you didn't start a mobile phone company just to speak at a rodeo?
No.
Last night was great.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a fantastic event. My first rodeo. Let me take you back.
That's a saying in the U.S.
Yep.
That's not my first rodeo.
It was mine. We don't get rodeos in London.
Have cattle?
No, we don't have cattle. We don't have cattle. We don't have any of that. Completely different. Your background. You and Jenny were in New York. Your finance background. You end up here in Texas. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get on to actually the involvement that Patriot Mobile have, I think, in turbocharging a lot of causes, a lot of events, a lot of great campaigns. But tell us a little bit about your background, finance guy in New York.
Well, you know what? I'm an accountant. It's really interesting. I'm the last of a family of 4 offsprings, and my sisters and brother were much older, 8 years older. They got all the looks, they got all the intelligence, they got everything. But the one thing that God gave me was the gift of gab. And secondly, I am blessed with quantitatively. And when I was in college, I was just telling somebody last night, and I know you didn't ask this, but it's an important part of the story is, I was not a great reader. I can read, I can interpret things, but what I could do is just look at numbers and kind of figure them out. And, I got back into school, had some struggles early on. I did some fun stuff, and it just wasn't focus of school. But when I got back into school, I begged to get in, and this one professor, actually she's a director of admissions at the University of Texas at Dallas, and she told me, she said, there's something in your eye. I'm going to give you a second shot. And I said, I just appreciate that. And so what was interesting is I got back into school, I learned to study and study well. Listen to a lecture and, go home, read what the lecture was about, etc. But as school progressed, they told me there was a year left and you need to declare a major. And I was like, what's that? So I really went back, and she says, I have no idea what I want to do. She goes, well, Glenn, if you look at your grades, you have A's in basic accounting, advanced theory, advanced practice. And she goes, it's obvious you need to be an accountant. So that's what I did. And I studied, graduated right under with honors, and then I went and got my CPA, which is a 3-day exam here in the United States. They say it's similar to the bar, but it's more quantitative in nature and less reading. And that was my background. And so I really believe numbers controls the world, right? numbers really dictate what happened, whether it's financial statements, metrics, or statistics. It's numbers, and it's just my gift and the gift of gab, as you can probably see. But with that said, that's what I did in New York. I ran accounting departments from accounting manager to controller to VP of finance, and then I was a chief accounting officer signing 10Ks and 10Qs. And the interesting piece is those were all subscription revenue models. So when you look at subscription revenue, from magazines to SaaS-based companies, and what is Patriot Mobile? It's a subscription-based model. So I look back at the days that I was just a staff accountant working for these SaaS companies. It was his way of building blocks. So I really understand the flow of the subscription revenue world, and that's just his gift. So the seed started early on.
And then you come to Texas. So I just kind of thought you were Texan, but
I'm
no,
a
you're
redneck,
not.
baby.
But you come here, you start. Tell us kind of. You said you hit all the landmines and roadblocks early on. Tell us kind of what that was like when you God gives you an idea, doesn't necessarily tell you the full pathway in front, and you need to stumble and work that out. What was that like? And were there times you thought maybe this isn't? Maybe I misheard him. Maybe this is not it.
That's a really great question. I never felt like I misheard him. Never. Now, the roadblocks, you're never really just prepared for everything. It's like marriage, right? As you age, people change, and you have to change with that, or you're changing, so you got to see change. And so this business, the roadblocks or the potholes that we hit was we've had, I think, 3 or 4 CEOs. And by default, I landed in the position. Early on, I was a CEO and CFO. Terrible, terrible thing. You can't do both. But what was interesting as we morphed into who we are today, when we introduced our creator to say, no, when we said, God, please be a part of our business. We need you to guide our footsteps. And we say that to our management team. And I'm going to digress momentarily, and I want you to talk with her because I think she would be a great interview. She's a mother, and I'm not going to give names, but she's our head of HR. She came to us as a mom that had 3 children, I think at the time 8, 10, and 12, maybe 6, 8, and 10. Anyway, the ages, they were at home. And she came into an interview, and I like to meet all the senior people we hire because I just want to see their hearts and how they talk and things. And I said, why are you coming to Patriot Mobile? We work. You've seen us. I got up this morning, attended. We're always working, right? And it's not work, it's work. Yeah. And I said, we work probably anywhere between 60, 78, hours a week. Yeah. And she goes, I'm being obedient. God told me that I'm supposed to be here. And I went to my husband and she said, God, this is what God said to me. And he said, okay, we weren't planning on this. Now she's been here for 4 years. And that is what happens here when you ask God to be in it. Yeah. So, yeah, we've had potholes, but the mountain. And, God says, I'm there with you. He didn't say it's easy. And, that's a beautiful thing because when we struggle a little bit, we say our prayers. He moves in this business. I don't know if you feel it when you come in, but I don't feel it maybe like you because I'm here every day. It's the warmth of the fire. Yeah. But what's crazy is just yesterday, somebody said they were in here and they go, you don't feel what I feel. You don't see what I see because you're there. And you guys have built an incredible business. And I said, it's not us. We're just a part of it. And it's his. And we want to run our business in a biblical manner. The shop, the talk at the water cooler is not what you did last night. I was chasing girls or we drank all night. And, that's not. It's how can I save our country? What can I do? What can I do to glorify our Creator? And it's that way from the mail room all the way up to the executive lounge. And we eat together. And it's just crazy what happens.
Well, even coming in today, coming in, your security guard sits down. Oh, would you like a coffee? Do you want some of the bathrooms there? Can I get you water?
Yeah.
And that friendliness, and you don't see that. You come to the front desk and it's just give me your name, sit down, and keep quiet, and someone will come and find you. Where it's more, and you're right, it goes from top to bottom all across, and everyone has that openness to others, that friendliness, and it's fairly unusual, I think, in an organization.
It's really true. That's very true, and that's what I was trying to say. It's so odd.
Yeah.
But you just say, hey, that's him. It's our creator moving in each one of these folks and through this business, and we're Texan. We're raised that way and biblically, and we love what we do.
We want to get into some of the events, but again, from a UK point of view, we don't have a conservative economy. We certainly don't have a MAGA economy. And it's interesting, maybe some of the UK audience may think, well, why does a mobile phone company have to be Christian or conservative? It kind of provides a mobile phone service. But that attitude has meant Christians have not engaged in a lot of the spheres. How do you kind of answer that from a perspective of seeing things differently in the UK and kind of siloing off your Christianity? I think that's personal, that's not public. Here, it's public, it's full on. Your faith is on your sleeve, you're all in. How kind of tell us a little bit about kind of that difference and why Christians have to be engaged in these areas.
Well, that's a great question. And 12 years ago, 13 years ago when we started it, it was the same way in the United States. However, that was really before the pre-woke era. If you remember how that was, but we noticed the tendencies of companies were not to honor their creator and not to live by the morals and the standards and the ethics that we espouse as a nation, right? Even if you think about it, our nation, I always do this. I always kind of say, look, we agree on 80% of the topics, right? So you sit there and look at that. The outside 10 on each side, they'll never agree. But the rest of us really agree on the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom to bear arms, and the right to life. Most of us agree on that stuff. And we all love our military. We've got the news media out there barking about how we shouldn't be in Iraq and all this stuff. It's just, it's garbage and it's pollution. And my point, really circling back to it, is when you see what other organizations are doing and it's contrary to the opinions of the people that are there, it's a great time to do something like that. And, we entered the market before the wokeness, and then woke came out. I don't believe that a boy should be boxing a girl. It's just contrary to I think that boy should be beaten by a man. Yeah. And swimmers, Riley Gaines, we saw her last night and talked with her. What is the 400th or 500th best guy in the world trying to beat a bunch of women? Yeah. It's just nobody would agree with that. That's in a right mind. That's possessed by a demon in my sense. Yeah. So the question really is, what inspired you and why would you do that? Well, it's to give the glory to him and to bring good people together to do good things. And I'm not saying I'm never going to knock the networks here. Our cell phone carriers, they're great partners. We just do it a little differently.
Tell me, the sponsorship and programs you're on, and it's a different world to the UK. You've got that. Actually, you talked about Republican initially. You were focusing on that market. You're now branded as the America's only Christian conservative mobile phone provider. How did that change happen from looking at this in a just political Republican to actually this is wider and conservative side, but actually Christianity it's what's fairly central? How kind of did you make the move from just Republican to Christian conservative? Because those are they have overlap, but they're very different also.
They're very different. Yeah, that's a great question. How did we do it? It was really that motivation by one of my board members saying, "Hey, you're not glorifying your creator," and he was right. And sales from that day to where they are today is 13, 14, 15x. I mean, it's just the blessings that he's given us over a very short period of time. And you look at it and you kind of go, excuse me, why wouldn't you do it? It's you just look back at the biblical times. These guys, especially our apostles, were talking on a street, and the secular movement was out there trying to stone them and kill them, and because they didn't want to hear it. Yet they took the word and said, "I'm going to go talk about it." So it's that same thing that you want to do is you want to honor him because he's provided, and it shows what's happening. So you look at your question was Republican versus Christian. There's a strong overlap, but there's also some Republicans out there that they're not Republicans because some of the stuff they espouse or what they try to do is not Christian. From my perspective, life is, I'm not going to say, I just had a conversation with a woman last night. She was a Democrat. And I said, "Can you agree with me that it's wrong to terminate a baby at 40 weeks? And she's like, "By all means." And I said, "Well, how about 30 and 20? Exactly. And you kind of go, that is a life. Yeah. My CMO up there was premature by a month plus. Look at him. He's 6'4", 240 pounds and solid sheet of muscle and brilliant. But, thank God that they saved him. And so my point is, look, we're not always going to agree. That's our philosophy. We believe in life. I personally believe it starts at conception. Yeah. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, there's that light burst. Yeah. Where does life come from? Yeah. We could really get deep. Life comes from life, not two stones or atoms hitting each other. So
I want to get, that's one of your 4 pillars, but I want to, when I come here, I talk to people and people may say, "I've got Patriot Mobile, I'm with them." Others may say, "I'm not." And I think, what do you mean you're not? Why would you not be? Why would you not have a mobile phone company that seeks to put forward your values, especially as a Christian? So how, to the audience, and I know certainly the War Room Posse will see you on War Room regularly. We'll see Jenny on regularly at different events. But maybe they haven't yet decided to make the move. How do they do that? How do they, in finishing this program, decide, actually, I'm going to go to Patriot Mobile? I don't lose anything. It's seamless. How do they kind of make that transition over if they haven't already?
It's about the simplest way. In the olden days when we started, it was a pain because we were on the CDMA network. Now, GSM is the rest of the world, right? Yeah. And so we would have to get them a new phone. We would have to do all this, and it just was a pain. So once we got into GSM, you keep your phone, you keep your number, you keep everything. You don't have to do anything other than call our 972 Patriot and say, "Hey, I want to be on the cell phone service." And it's that simple. If you have 5 or 6 phones, it takes a little bit of time, but we're talking anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to get 5 phones over. But why do you do it? It's because of the values we espouse probably align with most of your audience. And that's who you want to support, right? You want to support organizations that align with your values. And that's really what it boils down to.
So they can phone or they can do it online. How, when they do this, what numbers do they phone? How exactly will they do it?
Well, you call 972 Patriot and you'll get one of our, I like to say this, I say this on Bannon a lot, you'll get an East Texas hillbilly or a redneck like me, or you'll get somebody from California. We have a pretty big call center out in California. And, that's our second largest concentration of customers is California. And so call us or get on patriotmobile.com and do your work and find out what you want and buy right online.
Well, let me just repeat what I said. As I said to all my American friends, why would you not? There's no reason to be on any other network. You get all the same benefits. So make sure and give a call or click that link all the links will be in the description. Let me ask you, how do you focus? Because I've seen some of the events. You've got some fun events. I was at that. I landed Thursday week ago. I went straight to that event with Tommy, with Chip Roy, with Keith Sell, with Brian, with Brent. Fantastic event. And then I was at the Saturday event, the Freedom Summit with Debbie Georgiadis. Yes. Again, you were involved in sponsoring that. I get to see something completely different last night. A Fort Worth rodeo.
Your first rodeo.
My first rodeo. They were setting fire to things. They were on. It was just. It was brilliant. You've talked about involved in cars, at NASCAR and other things. Yeah. How the focus is the business, which is selling mobile phones, but you also have a lot of other events. How do you, I guess, not get pulled off? Because there are a lot of exciting things happening, but your bread and butter is a mobile phone business. So how do you kind of put those together?
Well, you think about it. You look at a marketing funnel, right? Now, our mission is to support organizations that align with our customers' values, right? They come to us for that very reason, and that's the only reason they come to us. We don't build a better mousetrap. We support the better mousetrap, and that's what I always like to say. On the flip side of that, outside of supporting organizations, why do you go to NASCAR? Well, that's a part of the marketing funnel. Because the first 10 years or 8 years of our business, we used conservative talk radio. Then we got into Real America's Voice and the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest news organizations that are coming up. They got the new, Real America's Voice Music, etc. Yeah. I love that. And so, we use that to sell our business to customers. It's a marketing tool, and that's top of funnel. So NASCAR is different than conservative talk radio. So all of a sudden, we're addressing a group of people over here that love their God, they love their country, they love their family, and that's really who we're marketing to, because we want them to be customers. So the more that they come to us, the more we can give back to those organizations and candidates that align with our values.
Did you ever get starstruck seeing some of the people? Because again, you're in a business, then you get to engage with people. Obviously, you are all these big events now. Benny Johnson last night, and it's normal for you. But maybe earlier on, you get to connect with people who are kind of stars on the screen, and then you get to engage with them. Yeah. You must have thought, pinched yourself back in the early days, and now it's just the norm. You just pick up the phone and talk to them all.
That's an interesting question, and I say this. I grew up in a city, but I summered every summer on a ranch, and I saw both sides of life, and I realized the farmers, teachers, and first responders are probably the most underpaid people out there, and the lousy unions that support them need to be destroyed, quite frankly, because they're useless from my perspective. But to go back to what you said, it takes me back to a phrase that I've learned to think about quite frequently. It's God doesn't call the equipped; He equips the called. Yeah. And I've been called, and I'm called to stand in front of people and say that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. And through Him and His grace and His shedding of blood, we have a chance to spend eternity with Him in heaven. So I look at that and say, I've met the president, and my heart raced a little bit. But he's just no different than me and you. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all children of God, and we're here to support others. So, it does. I love seeing Riley Gaines, and I love talking with her husband Louie, and hopefully you can share that clip with me, because I love those guys. And the real beauty of it is, and I don't even see that really, and sitting here with you, I mean, I just feel like I'm with a friend, and that's the way I see it, right? So I'll get starstruck occasionally.
You mentioned some of the values. You mentioned about pro-life. There are 4 pillars: the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. I wish we had the first one. I wish we had the second one in the UK. You got the pro-life, and you got the veterans. They're fairly simple when you think of them, but you have to come up with them initially and say, well, how do we could have a list of 20 things. Yeah. So again, you had to sit down and say what is important to us, what defines us. What was that What was that like, and kind of how did you settle on those? Why are those so important?
You know, those were kind of to me. They just they just came to us, right? It wasn't like we sat in a room and strategized. It was we were talking, sitting here, and saying, "Hey, why do people come to us?" Well, those are really the four life. But if you think about it, there's biblical verses around every one of them. I do believe they're divine. I really do. I think life is all over the Bible. I mean, Jeremiah 1:5. I knew you before you were in the womb. I knew you in the womb, and the hands that netted you. Just start looking at that's biblical, right? And how about First Amendment? I mean, Second Amendment. Is owning a gun a biblical thing? Well, protecting your family has always been. It might have been swords, spears, and rocks at one time, but you know, I just love it. I look at what David and Goliath went through. You know, my Bible says David, you know, killed the giant. The giant was threatening his people. Picked up 3 rocks and took one, put it in the sling, and embedded it in his head. Do you think the hand of God had something to do with that?
You're not going to have any Second Amendment stuff branded, are you? Can you get like a Patriot mobile firearm? I think that's a Brit. I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna just, if I may plug one of my friends.
Of course you can.
We have a couple, the team at Daniel Defense. We love them and what they stand for. They're teaching children the values around a gun and how to handle and to take care of them. They're starting a Texas organization, the Daniel Defense Fund, Daniel Defense Group. And I also know the folks at Primary Weapon Systems, Navy SEAL. Gentleman is a great guy, and you know, I hope everything is going well with them. And you know, they have I have a gun this color. I don't think you can see it, but it's a red firearm, and you know, he's a 20-year Navy SEAL protecting our country. And he came back and started a gun company, and you know, maybe we need to get you one.
Well, that is a thought. that is a thought.
But we can't send it back.
No, you can't ship it over. You must have faced, and I've got to know you a little bit, and you're not someone who really is deflected. That you kind of know what you're doing, but yet I'm sure you faced criticism. I'm sure there've been media hit pieces on you to say, like, this is a dangerous company. They're speaking about Jesus, how awful, or speaking about life, or speaking. What has that been like? I'm sure that just emboldens you, but it's still something that you face as you do what you believe is right.
Yeah, you know, we do see that. I mean, we have protesters that come out. We've got people that's. But you know what? He never said it was going to be easy. There will be troubles. Yeah. Right? And so was he speaking to his apostles, or was he speaking to us? Right? And you have one of your good friends over in the UK that if he speaks the truth, he goes to jail. Yeah. And my philosophy is I'm commanded to speak the truth. And you know what? There'll be troubles. And I truly believe that he is with us. And if you have the sword of truth, the sword of the Spirit, you have the shield of faith and all that, you know, we're going to be okay. Not only are we going to be okay, we're going to do really well.
We're going to prosper. We're going to succeed.
Amen.
Let me finish off on the side of faith, especially the side of churches, because, again, in the UK, it's churches, as long as they can preach the gospel on a Sunday morning and maybe have a midweek meeting, that's all good. But actually, there's a place for Christians within and churches to be encouraged to actually use levers in the economics to actually put forward a message, and what you do is exactly that. How do you engage with churches? Because I'm sure some churches are a bit shy. I don't know if we want you coming to them about your mobile phone, but yet you bring values out there that they have within. So what's that engagement like with the church?
You know what? It has been a little bit challenging at times because the church itself has been a little bit weak. And I think the church are the people, right? But the leaders of the church have been a little bit weak in the sense, and I think that's this woke stuff. They didn't fight it head on, and I think they could do a lot better, and that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle right now. Now, I was at the AFPI, America First Policy Institute, this morning, and they had a prayer breakfast or a prayer brunch, is what they called it. And Pastor Jansen Franklin spoke today about the little cloud, the prophet. I don't remember if it was Jeremiah, but he went over and prayed 7 times for rain, and a little cloud formed the size of a hand.
Yep.
And the rain started, and it rained over the nation of Israel back then. My point really being is, getting pastors involved and more political. There are finally some pastors coming around, and Pastor Jensen Franklin was one of those guys. He goes, "Look, I love my country, and I love our president." And it takes chutzpah to say that. It takes the spirit to. I think what most churches are worried about is losing their tax shelters if they go out. Well, you know what? You better just start looking at the scripture and saying, what should we do? Because if it tastes right and it feels right and it's scripturally or biblically right, you got to do it. Yeah. You got to fight for this country. The pastors in our olden days, they might have had a not a skirt, but a cloak around them, but underneath that cloak was a musket. Those men and women are what really fought and saved this country. And I'm not sure most of the pastors today will do that, but we're starting a group called Patriot Mobile Faith.
Okay, good.
And Patriot Mobile Faith is really going to be geared to selling cell phone services into churches and then donating back to the church's missions and really fighting for biblical causes. That's not going to be Patriot Mobile. It's going to be a separate business, and there is a real world for it. And after spending the time this morning and this week with the AFPI folks, I just noticed, look, there's a real there.
Let me just finish off on your growth, because every time I come here, there seems to be something different happening.
Yeah, you've been coming a lot more frequently.
I know.
You're always welcome. Look, we got an office for you if you'd like.
Okay. But you're growing and growing. You're taking extra areas, and you're not stopping. And I guess if you follow God, if you trust Him, then He will bring it to pass. He will give you that success. Commit your way to the Lord, trust Him, and He will give you success.
Amen.
But just me finish on kind of how that growth has been, because it seems like fairly breakneck at some times, and you kind of have to catch up and make sure you can provide, I guess, for those customers as you grow, and then the demands on you to actually be part and sponsor events, I'm sure is intense. Everyone wants Patriot Mobile to be part of their event. Yeah. Just finish off on that growth and what that's been like, even the last maybe year or two. I mean, you've got a bus that's been driving around, your big bus with a wrap on it.
Was it here today?
No, I saw the CPAC. It might have been, but you've got all these things that are happening to take it out. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, just in the last year or two, how you've been growing.
Well, I'll tell you, we've doubled in size. Like I said, 10, 15x over the last several years, or 4 or 5, whatever. God has provided. He's provided us with an incredible staff. We have people that I just would have never dreamt of. And, we just talked about our head of HR. She attends functions. She's got a great staff. And our head of HR, and I really call him, he's not a recruiter. He's the gatekeeper. He finds great talent, and he vets them. He brings them to us once they pass his 20-year military man. I mean, that guy loves his country. Wow. He loves his God even more, and he loves his family, and he loves Patriot Mobile. And he will not allow, he knows, right? Mm-hmm. He'll interview, and the beauty of it is he's done a fantastic job. And so how does that relate to what you ask? Well, look, it's all staff. Yeah. It's the people here. And I'll tell you very quickly about what happened. Many years ago, I was with a company in New York, and it went, pre-public. This was in the late 90s, and everybody's jumping ship off of mainstream companies to go work in the .com arena. And including me, I was headhunted away. And what was interesting about that period of time was there was an atmosphere in New York City that I was a part of that I would promise you that I don't think I would ever see again. I never thought I'd feel it because the day we went public, we had 19-year-olds that had never been in the labor force running around, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. And you're kind of going, gosh, I've been in the workforce 10 years, 15 years. And my wife was like, I've been here 20 years. And but, the dot-com blew up, and it probably hurt a lot of people. But the real interesting piece of that is that energy I'll never forget in the late 90s, that everybody just loved their job. They would come to work. They would love to get in. I'm going to just say fast forward today, and I bet if you brought Ethan in and said, hey, what do you think, he would corroborate it. But people really like coming to work. And why do they come to work? It's not that everybody's going to be a millionaire. It has more to do with the fact that they're serving a greater cause. And it gives me goosebumps, dude. I mean, I just sit here and think. You go pull off anybody out, and most of them, you're going to get most people say, yeah, I enjoy coming to work. There are times that, I'm looking at Ethan now, that guy works his tail off. I bet it's not uncommon for him to put 80 hours in, 70 hours of work. Yet, I think he still loves. He left for a while, and he came back, and or he was going to leave. But here's the real beauty. They know they're serving a greater cause, and it's this world. It's not the world, right? The prince of the world is Satan.
Yeah.
And so all of us are serving a greater cause, and he gives us strength to attend these functions. He gives us what we need to survive, and he's brought great people in here. And just one anecdote, not an anecdote, it was Reuben. He's one of the guys that works for us. We had 4 shows the other day, 4 events, and he was like, he comes in, I love the guy. He's a Brazilian guy. He comes in, he's Glenn, I'll be away all day. I'm going to pack 4 different boxes. They're going to 4 different shows. I got them. And, you see him the next day, and Ethan, they'll drive in the trucks. They do, guys do everything around here. And the real beauty is he goes, I said, what are you going to do? He goes, I can't wait to go. And now I think a third of the staff, or maybe 10 or 20 people's out at the Texas Motor Speedway. And Ethan, you're probably going as well here in a little while, right? And so we just do multiple things. But you just look at it. I'm 60 plus years old. I probably act like a 20-year-old about half the time. So.
Glenn, it's great to chat to you. It's great to learn a little bit more, and I'll have to keep doing this every time I come over just to catch up. Probably the next time you'll be sponsoring the latest mission to Mars or something on some NASA rocket. It's just you keep coming up with different ways, I think, of promoting. But thanks for.
I got to interrupt you. We're not stopping. I got to tell you something. So you got to hear this. Okay, I'm going to butcher the story a little bit, but it's not a story. It is reality. I heard it today. So this family in Canada had a big ranch. They lost everything. And they had a plane. So they disassembled their plane, and they put it in a bunch of boxes, and they shipped it to South Africa. You're not going to know where this goes yet. You're not know where I'm going. Anyway, they put this box. They go down there. This is 2 generations back. Anyway, the family that was down in South Africa worked, they lived, they did stuff, and the dad had the calling to go over to, I'm going to butcher this, Australia.
Okay.
Hold that. Anyway, it was a long flight, and they flew their airplane, this little Cessna type airplane, all the way, and they did it. They traveled 30,000 miles in a Cessna. Think about it. It takes us, 18 hours in a jet?
Yeah.
So 30,000 miles, and this family, it's just amazing. So this family lived over there, going back and forth between Australia and South Africa in this little plane. They went to nothing, and that is the grandfather of Elon Musk.
Wow.
Now you think about it. The seed that was planted, all of a sudden you have Elon Musk thinking about, instead of traveling on a little Cessna airplane from South Africa over to Australia, he's thinking about colonizing Mars.
Yeah.
So it gives me goosebumps thinking that it's that little seed, the little rain cloud we talked about earlier, shedding rain on Jerusalem. Now that Elon Musk is now trying to colonize Mars, and it's the thoughts, right? What are we going to do to inspire the next generation? We're not going to inspire them to lay down like a lapdog. We're going to inspire them to be a German shepherd that's protecting the flock, And so, that's what I want to leave behind is, I wish I could show you a picture of my great-grandfather that served in the Civil War. My dad fought in World War II. My business partner's dad was in Vietnam, and so it's in our blood to fight for what we love and believe in, and that's me. I might not have been a military man, but I'll tell you, my best friend's dad, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and when we screwed up, he'd get a 2-by-4 out, and I guarantee he wasn't going to catch me. So, but the discipline, and it all boils back down to our Creator.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, thanks for sharing the story. And again, if any Americans watching, if you're not already over to Patriot Mobile, certainly take the opportunity and get over and be part of what God is doing here through the fantastic team of Patriot Mobile. But thanks very much, Glenn.
Dude, it was great. I just had such
Thank
a good
you.
time. Hey, like I said, you have an office here,
Okay.
so you're welcome to join us anytime.
I'll keep coming.
All right,
Perfect.
how did that go?
That's a wrap.
Easy.
I think it was okay.
That was
I
easy.
fumbled through it a little